The Valoran High Council chamber had never felt so cold. Talvex stood before the 12 most powerful individuals in the Confederacy, feeling the weight of their attention like a physical pressure against his scales behind him. A massive display showed the sensor recordings from his encounter with the human warship. "You retreated," High Counselor Vethra said, her voice dripping with barely concealed contempt. 200 ships against one. "And you ordered a full withdrawal. I made a tactical decision based on available data." Talvex replied evenly, "As is my duty as fleet commander. Your duty is to expand the Confederacy," snapped Counselor Drucken, the youngest member of the council and the most aggressive. "Not to flee before primitive species, barely capable of interstellar travel." Talvex felt a flash of anger, but controlled it with practiced discipline. "With respect, Counselor, I suggest you review the sensor logs before making such assessments." He manipulated the display controls, bringing up the tactical recordings from the standoff. The chamber fell silent as the council watched the Indomitable execute maneuvers that defied everything they understood about physics and biology. This vessel accelerated at forces that would have killed any Valoran crew instantly, Talvex narrated. Its hull is composed of alloys designed to withstand temperatures found in stellar cores. Its weapon systems, which never even powered to full capacity during our encounter, registered energy outputs exceeding our largest battleships. "One ship," Counselor Mithil muttered, her earlier skepticism fading. "They built a single ship more powerful than our entire fleet." "Not a single ship," Talvex corrected. "One ship from a class of vessels they designate as cruisers, a medium-weight combatant in their fleet structure. Their intelligence suggests they possess dedicated battleships 3 times the size of the Indomitable." The chamber erupted in alarmed murmurs. High Counselor Vethra raised her hand for silence. "You expect us to believe that these humans, a species we had never heard of until recently, possess military capabilities that exceed our own? I expect you to examine the evidence and draw your own conclusions," Talvex said. "But yes, that is precisely what I'm telling you. The humans are not like the other species we have encountered. They did not develop their technology to defend against external threats. They developed it to fight each other." He brought up the historical data his intelligence officer had compiled. Images of human warfare throughout their history filled the display. Primitive conflicts with bladed weapons, massive industrial wars involving millions of soldiers, weapons capable of destroying entire cities in single strikes. Their species has been in a state of near-constant conflict for most of their existence, Talvex explained. They have killed hundreds of millions of their own kind in wars spanning their entire planet. Every weapon they possess, every tactical doctrine they employ, was designed to defeat opponents as dangerous as themselves. Counselor Drucken leaned forward, his expression troubled. "If they are so violent, why did they not destroy your fleet? Why show mercy?" "That is the question that has occupied my thoughts since leaving their space," Talvex admitted. "And I believe I have found the answer." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "The humans are not offering us mercy because they are weak. They are offering it because they have learned something we have not. They have seen what endless war leads to. They have stood on the edge of extinction by their own hands. And they have chosen a different path." "Sentiment," Vethra dismissed. "A species capable of what you described does not simply abandon their nature. They have not abandoned it," Talvex countered. "They have mastered it. When I spoke with their captain, I saw a warrior who could have ordered my destruction without hesitation. But he chose restraint, not because he could not kill us, but because he understood that killing us would not serve his people's interests." He straightened his posture and faced the council directly. "The humans want peace. They want trade and cooperation and mutual benefit. But make no mistake, if we force them into war, they will wage it with a ferocity we cannot match. They will not stop until we are utterly defeated. They will not accept negotiated surrenders or limited engagements. They will fight until one side or the other is destroyed. The chamber was silent as his words sank in finally. Counselor Mithil spoke. "What do you recommend, Commander?" "Diplomacy," Talvex said without hesitation. "We send ambassadors to their homeworld. We acknowledge the incident involving their colony ship and offer appropriate restitution. We propose trade agreements and cultural exchanges and formal recognition of their territorial claims. You want us to grovel before these humans?" Draken demanded. "I want us to survive." Talvex shot back. "The Confederacy has built its power by conquering species weaker than ourselves. That strategy has served us well for 3 centuries. But the humans are not weaker. They are stronger. Perhaps stronger than any species we have ever encountered. Our choice is simple. We can be their partners, or we can be their enemies. And if we choose to be their enemies?" Talvex met the young counselor's eyes. "Then the Valoran Confederacy will cease to exist within a generation. Perhaps sooner." The council erupted into heated debate. Some members argued for building up military forces and preparing for war. Others advocated for immediate diplomatic overtures. A few suggested ignoring the humans entirely and hoping they would lose interest in Valoran. Affairs High Counselor Vethra listened to the arguments without comment, her expression unreadable. Finally, after nearly an hour of discussion, she raised her hand once more. "Enough," she declared. "I have made my decision." The chamber fell silent. "Fleet Commander Talvex will be assigned as our ambassador to the human government," Vethra announced. "He will travel to their homeworld and open formal diplomatic relations. He will express our regret regarding the colony ship incident and negotiate appropriate terms for peaceful coexistence." "Counselor," Draken protested. This is necessary," Vethra interrupted, her voice hard as iron. "I have led this confederacy for 40 years. I have overseen the conquest of 4 worlds and the integration of 3 species into our civilization. I know when to fight and when to seek other solutions." She turned to face Talvex. "You spoke of the humans learning from their history of violence. Perhaps it is time we learned as well. Perhaps the Confederacy's future lies not in endless expansion, but in finding worthy partners among the stars." Talvex bowed his head respectfully. "I will not fail you." "High Counselor, see that you do not," Vethra replied. "The fate of our people may depend on what you accomplish." As Talvex left the council chamber, he felt the weight of his new responsibilities settling across his shoulders. He was no longer a fleet commander. He was an ambassador to a species that could destroy everything his people had built. And somehow, against all logic, that prospect filled him with something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope the humans had shown him mercy when they had every reason to seek revenge. Perhaps they would show his people mercy as well. Perhaps this was the beginning of something better than either species could build alone. He would travel to their world and find out. 6 months had passed since the standoff in the disputed system. Ambassador Talvex stood in a memorial garden on the outskirts of Geneva, Earth's diplomatic capital, surrounded by thousands of white stones that stretched across the hillside like fallen stars. Each stone bore a name. Each name belonged to someone who had died aboard the colony ship New Harmony. He had requested permission to visit this place before the final signing ceremony, and the human government had granted his request without hesitation. Now, alone among the graves of those his people had killed, he understood why they had allowed it. This was not about punishment. This was about understanding. "My grandsons. Stone is in the 3rd row," a voice said. From behind him, Talvex turned to find an elderly human woman approaching along the garden path. Her hair was white as snow, her face lined with years of living, her eyes holding a depth of pain that transcended species barriers. "I am Ambassador Talvex," he said. Bowing his head respectfully, "I am deeply sorry for your loss. I know who you are," the woman replied. "I am Yoon Houn. I was watching the news when your ship arrived in orbit. My daughter called me crying. She thought you were coming to attack us. I understand why she would fear that," Talvex admitted. "But you did not come for war," Houn continued, studying him with those ancient eyes. "You came for peace." "Yes." She gestured for him to walk with her. And together they moved through the rows of memorial stones. The names were human, written in scripts Talvex had learned to recognize during his months of diplomatic training. Each one represented a life cut short, a future that would never unfold. A family left incomplete. His name was Yoon Minjun, Hound said, stopping before a stone near the center of the garden. He was 8 years old. He wanted to be a pilot when he grew up. He used to make model ships from scraps he found around our apartment and pretend to fly them through the stars. Talvex looked at the small stone and felt something he had not expected. Not the distant regret of a diplomat acknowledging past mistakes, but genuine sorrow, personal and immediate. For a child he had never known, "I do not have words sufficient to express my grief for what was done to him," he said quietly. "No apology can give him back to you." "No," Hound agreed. "Nothing can do that." They stood in silence for several moments. Finally, the elderly woman spoke again. "Do you know why I agreed to meet you today, Ambassador?" "I assumed you wanted to see the face of your enemy," Talvex replied honestly. "I wanted to see if you were really different," Hound corrected. "The news broadcasts show you speaking about peace and cooperation. The words are easy. Anyone can say the right things when cameras are watching. And now that you have seen me?" Hound turned to face him fully. "I see someone who is genuinely troubled by what happened here. I see someone who could have sent subordinates to handle an unpleasant task but chose to come himself. I see someone who understands that peace means nothing if it is not built on honest acknowledgement of the past." She reached out and touched his arm, a gesture of connection that transcended the gulf between their species. "My grandson is dead," she said. "Nothing will change that, but somewhere in the galaxy, there are Valoran grandchildren who are alive today because you chose to retreat instead of fight. There are human grandchildren who are alive because your people chose to send ambassadors instead of warships. You believe the treaty is worth pursuing?" Talvex asked. "I believe that every life saved is worth more than any revenge could ever be," Hound replied. "My Minjin would have believed that too. He used to say that aliens would be our friends someday, that we would explore the galaxy together and find wonderful things." She smiled, and there was both sadness and warmth in the expression. He was 8 years old, and he understood something that took your people and mine thousands of years to learn. Talvex felt moisture gathering in the corners of his eyes, a physiological response to emotion that Valorans usually suppressed in public. He did not suppress it now. "I will honor his memory," he promised. "I will work every day to ensure that what your people and mine build together is worthy of the sacrifice made by those who rest here." Hound nodded slowly. "That is all anyone can do. Ambassador, try to make the future better than the past." She squeezed his arm once more, then turned and walked back along the path, leaving him alone among the memorial stones. Talvex stood there for a long time, thinking about all the choices that had led to this moment. A fleet that had stopped before a single warship, a captain who had chosen mercy over vengeance, a council that had accepted wisdom over pride, and an elderly woman who had found the strength to forgive what should have been unforgivable. 2 hours later, he stood in the Great Hall of the United Earth Government, surrounded by representatives of both species. The treaty documents waited on a table between them, containing provisions for trade, territorial recognition, cultural exchange, and formal alliance against common threats. Captain Park Ji-hoon was there, wearing his dress uniform, standing among the human delegation with quiet dignity. Their eyes met across the chamber, and Park gave a small nod of acknowledgement. They had never spoken directly since that day in the disputed system, but they understood each other in ways that required no words. High Counselor Vethra had traveled from Valoran space for the ceremony. The first time a sitting High Counselor had ever left Confederacy territory, she stood beside Talvex, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes reflecting the magnitude of what they were about to accomplish. "Are you ready, Ambassador?" Earth Secretary General asked. Talvex thought of the memorial garden, of the white stones and the names they bore, of a grandmother's forgiveness and a dead child's dream of alien friends. "I am ready," he said. He signed his name to the treaty, followed by the High Counselor, followed by the Secretary General, and a dozen other officials from both governments. When it was done, the chamber erupted in applause that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Talvex allowed himself to feel something he had not experienced since his youth, not the satisfaction of military victory or political achievement, but something far more profound. Pride in having helped build something better. Pride in having been part of a moment when two species chose to reach for peace instead of war. As he stood there amid the celebration, his thoughts returned to that day when his fleet had stopped cold before a single human warship. He had been afraid then, certain that he was witnessing the end of everything he knew. He understood now that he had actually been witnessing a beginning, the beginning of a friendship that would span the stars, the beginning of an alliance that would change the galaxy, and the beginning of hope for a future that neither humans nor Valorans could have built alone. Sometimes, he realized, the bravest thing a warrior could do was not to fight. Sometimes, the greatest victory was choosing to lower your weapons, and sometimes, a single moment of mercy could reshape the destiny of worlds. Silence gripped the bridge of the Eternal Dominion as the Valoran officers stared at their displays with expressions ranging from disbelief to naked terror. Fleet Commander Talvex maintained his composure through sheer force of will, though his heart pounded against his chest in a rhythm he had not felt since his first battle nearly a century ago. "Confirm those readings," he ordered, his voice deliberately calm. Ryan's forehands trembled as she worked her console, running the same calculations for the third time. "Confirmed, Commander." The human vessel executed a 90-degree course change at full acceleration. Any crew subjected to those forces should have been reduced to pulp against their interior walls. "Perhaps they are unmanned," suggested Silvara, grasping for an explanation that made sense. "An automated defense platform of some kind." "Negative," the communications officer interjected. "We are intercepting internal transmissions from the vessel. There are definitely living beings aboard." "Let me hear it." Talvex commanded. Static crackled through the bridge speakers, followed by voices speaking in the harsh consonants of the human language. The translation software worked quickly, converting the alien speech into Valoran words. "Did anyone remember to record the game last night?" one voice asked. "I set it to auto-record," another replied. "Though, I bet Commander Beak spoils the score before we get back to port." "She better not. I have 50 credits riding on the Soul Tigers." Talvex felt his blood chill. These humans were facing 200 warships, executing maneuvers that defied physics, and they were discussing recreational activities as if nothing unusual was happening. This was not the behavior of warriors preparing for desperate battle. This was the calm of apex predators who did not recognize anything in their environment as a threat. "Commander," Kethra spoke up from his intelligence station, "I have completed a deeper analysis of available records regarding human military history. You need to see this." The elderly intelligence officer transferred his findings to the main display. and a cascade of images and data filled the screen. Talvex studied the information with growing unease. The records showed human conflicts, spanning thousands of years of their history. Wars that consumed entire continents, weapons that could level cities in single strikes, campaigns that lasted generations. Their largest conflict occurred approximately 200 years before they achieved interstellar travel, Cathra explained. They called it the Second World War. Over 70 million of their own species died in just 6 years. 70 million? Silvara whispered, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. They killed 70 million of their own kind in a single war? And then they rebuilt, Cathra continued. Cities that were reduced to rubble became thriving centers of commerce within decades. Nations that had been bitter enemies became close allies within a single generation. They do not merely survive catastrophe. They adapt and grow stronger because of it. Talvex examined an image showing a human city called Hiroshima, devastated by one of their primitive nuclear weapons. Beside a later image of the same location, transformed into a modern metropolis. The implications were staggering. Their homeworld designation as Class 12 is accurate, Cathra added. Extreme temperature variations between regions. Constant geological instability. A star that bombards the surface with radiation. Atmospheric oxygen at levels that would cause fatal toxicity in most known species. And liquid water that covers 70% of the surface. How did anything survive there at all? Ryan asked. Everything on their world is designed to kill, Cathra answered. Including the humans themselves, they evolved as pursuit predators, capable of tracking prey across vast distances until their targets collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies can heal from injuries that would be fatal to any of us. They remain conscious and functional even when severely wounded. A junior officer near the back of the bridge spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. Commander, why would such a species build warships at all? What could possibly threaten them? Talvex understood the terrible answer even before Cathra could respond. Each other, the old intelligence officer said. They built warships because for most of their history, the greatest threat to humans was other humans. Every weapon system, every tactical doctrine, every advancement in their military technology was designed to fight opponents as dangerous as themselves. The weight of this realization settled over the bridge crew like a funeral. Shroud, the Valoran Confederacy, had spent 3 centuries conquering species that could not match their power. The humans had spent millennia fighting wars against enemies, just as deadly as they were. That ship, Talvex said slowly, gesturing toward the Indomitable on the display, was not built to fight us. It was built to fight them. He studied the tactical readouts once more, seeing them now through fresh eyes, the impossibly dense reactor cores, the hull alloys designed to withstand stellar temperatures, the acceleration capabilities that would kill any normal crew. These were not excessive design choices. These were the minimum requirements for a species that expected every battle to be fought against an opponent of equal capability. Commander, Ryanth called out. The human vessel is transmitting. On speakers, a new voice filled the bridge. Calm and professional, speaking perfect Valoran without any trace of translation artifacts. Valoran fleet. This is Captain Park Ji-hoon of the United Nations ship Indomitable. You have entered space under the protection of the United Earth government. Please explain the presence of a military force in this system. Talvex noted that the human captain had not threatened them. He had not boasted about his ship's capabilities or warned them of the consequences of aggression. He had simply asked a question, as if 200 warships were a minor curiosity rather than an overwhelming threat. This, more than anything else, told Talvex what he needed to know. The Indomitable was not afraid because it had no reason to be afraid. They are waiting for our response, Commander, the communications officer prompted Talvex made his decision. He was old enough to recognize when the tide of battle had turned, wise enough to understand when further aggression would lead only to destruction. Open a channel, he ordered. Channel open. Talvex drew himself up to his full height and spoke with all the dignity he could muster. Captain Park. This is Fleet Commander Talvex of the Valoran 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We were unaware that this system was under human protection. We request permission to withdraw our forces peacefully. The response came after a brief pause. Permission granted. Commander Talvex, please transmit your withdrawal trajectory so we can ensure a safe departure corridor. The Indomitable will escort you to the system boundary. Escort them. A single ship would escort 200 Valoran warships out of the system. As if the entire 3rd Expeditionary Fleet was a wayward merchant convoy rather than the greatest military force the Confederacy had ever assembled. Understood, Talvex replied. We will comply. He ended the transmission and turned to face his stunned crew. Plot a withdrawal course, he commanded. All vessels will proceed to the system boundary at standard cruising speed. Commander, Silvara protested. We cannot simply retreat. The High Council will never. The High Council will receive my full report, Talvex interrupted. Along with every piece of data we have collected today, they can decide what happens next. But I will not sacrifice this fleet to learn what that ship can really do. He looked back at the tactical display, where the Indomitable had taken up position alongside his flagship, Warship, keeping pace with 200. As casual as a predator walking beside prey, it had chosen to spare for the first time in his long career. Talvex understood what it felt like to be on the wrong side of overwhelming force, and he knew, with cold certainty, that the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Park Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the Indomitable with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the Valoran fleet begin its slow withdrawal through the main viewport. The alien warships moved in perfect formation. 200 vessels that could have destroyed any other species in the known galaxy, now retreating before a single human cruiser. Well, Commander Beekmira said from her position at the tactical station. That was almost anticlimactic. Park allowed himself a small smile. Almost, he agreed. I counted at least 3 moments where they could have done something stupid. The young one looked ready to try. Beak observed the small cruiser that kept drifting out of formation. Captain Silvara. Park nodded. Her ship's weapon systems powered up twice during the initial standoff. Both times their fleet commander ordered her to stand down. Smart commander. Very smart. I was hoping we would not have to demonstrate anything today. Beak studied her captain's profile, noting the lines of tension around his eyes that the rest of the crew could not see. She had served under Park Ji-hoon for 7 years and knew him better than anyone aboard. You were thinking about New Harmony, she said quietly. Park's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. 6 months ago, a Valoran scouting party had encountered the colony ship, New Harmony, in disputed space. The colonists had tried to explain that they were civilians, families seeking new homes among the stars. The Valorans had classified them as unauthorized occupants and opened fire. 4,000 people had died in less than 3 minutes, including 800 children. The youngest victim had been 9 months old. I think about New Harmony every day, Park admitted. I see their faces when I close my eyes. I hear their last transmissions in my dreams. And why did we let them go? Beak asked, genuinely curious. We could have made them pay for what they did. The Indomitable alone could have crippled half their fleet before they even understood what was happening. Park turned to face his executive officer. And then what? We destroy 200 ships and kill however many thousands of Valorans are aboard. How does that bring back the people of New Harmony? It does not, Beak conceded. But it would make them think twice about ever attacking humans again. Would it? Park walked to the tactical display and pulled up a map of Valoran space. The Confederacy controls over 40 systems. They have a population of nearly 200 billion. If we destroy this fleet, they will build another. If we destroy that one, they will build 10 more. He highlighted the 12 species that have been absorbed into the Valoran Confederacy over the centuries. These are the races they have conquered. None of them could match Valoran military power. So they had no choice but to submit, but humanity is different. We can match them, we can exceed them, and that gives us options they have never had to consider. Such as showing them a different path, Park explained. The Valorans have only ever known two types of relationships with other species. Those they conquer, and those they have not conquered yet. But today they encountered something new. A species they cannot conquer, but who chose not to destroy them. Beak considered this perspective with the analytical mind that had made her one of the finest tactical officers in the fleet. You want to confuse them, she realized. Make them question everything they know about how the galaxy works. I want to give them a chance to be better, Park corrected. Maybe they will take that chance, maybe they will not. But we cannot build a future by only making enemies. A soft chime from the communication station interrupted their conversation. Lieutenant Kim. Sujin looked up from her console. Captain, I am receiving a direct transmission from the Valoran flagship. Their commander is requesting a private conversation. Park exchanged a glance with Beak before nodding. Route it to the ready room. I will take it there. He walked through the bridge door into the small office adjacent to the command center. The room was sparse by design, containing only a desk, 2 chairs, and a display screen. Park had always believed that a captain should not surround himself with distractions when making important decisions. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of Fleet Commander Talvex. The Valoran was old by the standards of his species. His scaled features marked with the scars and lines of a long military career. His 4 eyes studied Park with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every detail. Captain Park, Talvex began, his translated voice carrying a formal weight. I requested this conversation because I wish to understand something. I am listening. Park replied. You could have destroyed my fleet, Talvex stated bluntly. Your vessel's capabilities far exceed anything we anticipated. Our tactical projections suggest that the Indomitable alone could have disabled or destroyed at least 140 of my ships before we could have mounted an effective response. Park neither confirmed nor denied the estimate. Though, internally, he noted that Valoran tactical analysis was actually quite good. The real number was closer to 160. Yet you chose restraint, Talvex continued. You demanded our withdrawal rather than our destruction. I must know why. Park leaned back in his chair and considered his response carefully this moment. He understood, could shape relations between their species for generations. 6 months ago, he said, your people killed 4,000 of my people, civilians, families, children who had never harmed anyone. Talvex's expression shifted, showing something that might have been discomfort. I have read the reports of that incident, he admitted. The action was classified as a border enforcement operation. It was a massacre, Park said without anger. And every human being alive knows about it. There are people in my government who wanted to respond with overwhelming force. They wanted to turn Valoran worlds into cinders until your confederacy begged for mercy. Why did they not? Because revenge would not bring back the dead, Park answered. Because killing millions of your people would not undo what was done to ours. And because we believe there is a better way. Talvex was silent for a long moment. I have studied your species since this encounter began, he finally said. Your history is filled with violence beyond anything I could have imagined. You have weapons that could destroy worlds. You have waged wars that killed hundreds of millions, by every measure. You should be the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. We are, Park acknowledged. And yet you speak of better ways, Talvek said. You possess the power to crush us, but you choose to offer mercy instead. I do not understand this, Park smiled, though there was sadness in his eyes. Commander, my species has spent most of our existence learning how to destroy each other. We have built weapons capable of ending all life on our homeworld many times over. And along the way, we learned something important. What? That destruction is easy, Park said. Anyone can tear things down. Anyone can kill and burn and reduce civilizations to ash, but building something better, finding ways to live together despite our differences, that is hard. That takes courage and patience and the willingness to forgive things that should be unforgivable. He stood and walked closer to the screen. I am not offering you mercy because I am weak. Commander, I am offering it because I am strong enough to choose a different path. The question is whether your people are strong enough to walk it with us. Talvex held Park's gaze for a long moment. Something passed between them. A recognition of shared weight carried by those who commanded forces capable of terrible destruction. I do not know if my government will accept what you are offering, Talvex admitted. The Confederacy has built its entire identity around conquest and dominance. Then give them a new choice, Park suggested. Tell them what you saw today. Tell them that humanity wants neighbors, not enemies. And tell them that the path they are on leads only to destruction for both our peoples. Talvex nodded slowly. I will deliver your message. Captain Park, what happens next is beyond my control. I understand. Safe travels, Commander. The screen went dark. Park stood alone in his ready room for several minutes, thinking about the thousands of lives that might be saved or lost depending on how this day rippled through history. He hoped he had made the right choice. He hoped that mercy would prove stronger than vengeance. But if not, the indomitable would be ready. Humanity always was. The Valaran Confederacy had conquered 12 species across 300 years of expansion, and Fleet Commander Talvex had personally overseen the annexation of 4 worlds during his long career. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching through the main viewport as his 3rd expeditionary fleet assembled in perfect formation. 200 warships stretched across the void like a blade of steel and light, each one carrying enough firepower to reduce a continent to glass. Today, they would claim another system for the Confederacy, a mineral-rich collection of planets that their scouts had identified as undefended and ripe for the taking. Commander, his tactical officer Ryanth called from her station. All vessels report ready for translation to target coordinates. Talvex allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he surveyed his fleet. The Valarans had built their empire through superior technology and overwhelming force, and no species they had encountered possessed the means to challenge them. Initiate jump sequence. He ordered. The stars stretched into lines of white fire as reality bent around the fleet, and moments later they emerged into the target system. Ryanth's voice cut through the bridge silence with an edge of confusion. Commander, I am detecting an anomaly near the 4th planet. Talvex turned his attention to the tactical display, where a single contact blinked in the darkness. Identify, he commanded. Unknown vessel configuration, Ryanth replied, her 4-fingered hands dancing across her console. Energy signature is unlike anything in our database. Talvex studied the readings with growing interest. The ship was small by Valaran standards, perhaps 1/5 the size of his own flagship. Yet the numbers streaming across his display made no logical sense. The vessel appears to be running multiple reactor cores in parallel, Ryanth continued, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. Our records indicate this design approach is considered fundamentally unstable by every known spacefaring civilization. Who built ships like this? Asked Silvara, a young captain who had joined the bridge crew to observe the operation. Talvex pulled up the intelligence reports he had received before departure. They spoke of a species called humans, recently emerged from a remote spiral arm of the galaxy. But the information was sparse and often contradictory. Some accounts described them as primitive, barely capable of interstellar travel, while others painted them as something far more dangerous. He had dismissed most of these reports as exaggerated tales from frontier traders seeking attention. Now, staring at the impossible energy readings before him, he wondered if he had been too quick to judge. "The vessel is holding position," Ryan announced. "It has not altered course or attempted to flee." This troubled Talvex more than he wished to admit. Every species the Confederacy had encountered responded to the sight of a Valoran war fleet in one of two ways. They either ran or they surrendered. This lone ship did neither. It simply waited, as if a force of 200 warships was beneath its concern. "Open a channel," Talvex ordered. "Demand their identification and intentions." The communications officer worked his console for several moments before looking up with confusion. Written across his scaled features, "Commander, they are responding to our hail, but the message is strange. Display it." Words appeared on the main screen, translated into Valoran script by the ship's computers. "This is the United Nations ship, Indomitable, to unidentified fleet. You have entered space under human protection. Please state your purpose and intentions." Murmurs rippled through the bridge crew. A single ship was challenging an entire war fleet to explain itself. Silvara let out a sharp laugh of disbelief. "They must be mad," she said. "Do they not see what they face?" Talvex did not share her amusement. He studied the tactical display once more, noting how the Indomitable had positioned itself between his fleet and the fourth planet. There was nothing accidental about that placement. This ship had chosen its ground with deliberate precision. "Scan the planet," he ordered. Ryanth complied, and her next words sent a chill through his ancient bones. "Commander, I am detecting a settlement on the northern continent. Population approximately 3,000. They appeared to be an early-stage colony." Now the picture became clear. The humans had claimed this system, and this single warship had been stationed to protect their people. Talvex should have found this laughable. One ship against 200 was not a battle, but a suicide mission. Yet something in the calm confidence of that message, in the way the Indomitable held its position without the slightest sign of fear, gave him pause. "What do we know about human military capabilities?" he asked his intelligence officer, an elderly Valoran named Kethra, who had served the fleet for 60 years. Consulted his records before responding. "Very little confirmed intelligence exists, Commander. Most accounts are second-hand at best. However, there is one recurring detail across multiple sources, which is..." Kethra hesitated. An unusual display from a veteran who had witnessed countless battles. "They are classified as a Class 12 species. Commander, the bridge fell silent. Class 12 was the highest danger rating in the Valoran threat assessment system, reserved for species that had evolved on worlds so hostile that survival itself was a testament to their resilience. That classification must be an error," Silvara protested. "No sentient species develops on a Class 12 world. The data suggests otherwise," Kethra replied. "Their homeworld experiences extreme temperature variations, tectonic instability, regular impact events, and atmospheric conditions that would be lethal to most known species within days." Talvex absorbed this information while keeping his expression neutral. His crew looked to him for confidence, and he would not show them doubt even as it gnawed at his thoughts. "One ship," he said firmly. "Regardless of their origins, they have sent one ship to face our fleet. That is either the greatest bluff in galactic history or the act of a species too foolish to understand the odds against them." He straightened his posture and issued his command. All vessels, advance to combat formation. We will take this system as planned. The fleet began to move. 200 ships gliding forward in perfect synchronization. The Indomitable remained stationary for several heartbeats. And Talvex wondered if the humans had finally realized their mistake. Then the lone warship began to move. Every sensor alarm on the bridge screamed to life. Simultaneously, Ryan's voice cracked as she reported the readings. "Commander, the human vessel is accelerating at rates that should destroy any ship. They are executing maneuvers that would kill any crew we know of. Their reactor output is increasing beyond anything I have ever recorded." Talvex watched the tactical display as the single human warship danced through space with impossible grace. In that moment, he understood something with terrible clarity. This was not a bluff. This was not foolishness. This was a predator that had simply not decided to hunt yet. "All ships," he commanded, his voice steady despite the cold fear spreading through his chest. "Full stop. The Valoran 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, conquerors of 12 worlds, came to a halt before a single human warship, and across the void. The Indomitable waited to see what they would do next.